Welcome back from the lunch break. We do have a few housekeeping notes and reminders to get us started. This activity is eligible for an attendance certificate which supports continuing education by SOCR, RAPS, SQA, and ACRP. Please refer to our website at fda.gov/CDER for more details. You'll be able to obtain the attendance certificate only upon completion of the survey, which will remain open for 2 weeks. Remember, that's October the 12th. Please remember to download the certificate immediately upon completing the survey. It cannot be retrieved after the fact. Let us know your comments and feedback via the survey. This will help guide the design of our future events. To summarize, for our physicians, pharmacists, and nurses claiming the 6.5 continuing education credits, attendees have 14 days from the last day of the activity to log in, complete the required CE evaluations, and attest to attendance to claim credit. So be sure and complete the CE session evaluation on or before October the 12th. As a reminder, the email we send to attendees later today will have information on both the CE claim code and the survey link. Moving into our presentation, we'll learn about OMUFA updates from Lieutenant Commander Jason 2. Program Management Officer, Policy and Operations Branch in the Division of User Fee Management, Office of Management, CDER. Please join me to welcome Lieutenant Commander 2.
Thank you for the introduction. Hello, my name is Lieutenant Commander Jason 2, OMUFA Program Manager within the Division of User Fee Management for CDER. Today's presentation is titled OTC Monograph Drug User Fee Program, OMUFA, Understanding Fiscal Year 2023 User Fees and Registration. The agenda today covers what is OMUFA, registration and listing, OMUFA user fee types and fiscal year 2023 key dates, COVID-19 hand sanitizer manufacturers, OMUFA fiscal year 2023 fee rates, fee payment process, penalties for failure to pay fees, and helpful resources. So what is OMUFA? The Coronavirus Aid Relief and Economic Security Act, or CARES Act, was enacted on March 27, 2020. It included an important legislative initiative that reforms and modernizes the way OTC monograph drugs are regulated in the United States. The CARES Act added sections 744L and M of the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, or the FD&C Act, which authorized a new user fee program, the Over-the-Counter Monograph Drug User Fee Program, or OMUFA, dedicated to OTC monograph drug activities. What is the OMUFA User Fee Program? It is a congressionally authorized program of industry-paid fees to help fund FDA's regulatory activities for OTC monograph drugs. Congress authorization of the OMUFA program was informed by an FDA industry agreement and embodied in a commitment letter. In this commitment letter, FDA agreed to adhere to performance goals, including to review submissions within specific timeframes. These fees will support FDA's OTC monograph drug activities, which are detailed in Section 744L6 of the FD&C Act and include various FDA activities associated with OTC monograph drugs and the inspection of facilities associated with such products. There are some common OMUFA terms which are important to understand. OTC monograph drug. It is a non-prescription drug without an approved new drug application, which is governed by the provisions of Section 505G of the FD&C Act. An OTC monograph drug facility, or MDF, is a foreign or domestic business or other entity that, in addition to meeting other criteria, is engaged in manufacturing or processing the finished dosage form of an OTC monograph drug. Lastly, OTC Contract Manufacturing Organization, or CMO, is an OTC monograph drug facility where neither the owner nor any affiliate of the owner or facility sells the OTC monograph drug produced at such facility directly to wholesalers, retailers, or consumers in the United States. It's important to note that the CMO pays 2/3 of the amount of the fee paid by an MDF. All facilities are requested to review and update their current registration information, if applicable, to accurately describe the facility's operations. Registering the facility using the appropriate structured product labeling, or SPL, business operations, and business operation qualifiers will help FDA determine whether the facility is subject to applicable OMUFA facility fees. You may refer to the Electronic Drug Registration and Listing System, or eDRLS, SPL webpage for relevant SPL codes. Now we will discuss the registration and listing a little further. FDA has updated SPL business operation qualifiers for facilities that manufacture OTC monograph drug products. These include, and I will not go through the codes here, manufacture human OTC drug products produced under a monograph, or manufacture human OTC drug products produced under an approved drug application, or manufacture human OTC drug products not produced under an approved drug application or under a monograph. And lastly, contract manufacture human OTC drug products produced under a monograph. This includes those facilities with the business operations of analysis, pack, label, repack, and relabel. Now let's talk about OMUFA user fees. Under the CARES Act, FDA is authorized to assess and collect user fees dedicated to OTC monograph drug activities for fiscal year 2021 through fiscal year 2025. There are two types of OMUFA user fees, facility fee and OTC monograph order request, or OMR fee. OMUFA facility fees are assessed and due annually for qualifying facilities that engage in the manufacturing or processing of the finished dosage form of an OTC monograph drug. Facility user fee rates vary dependent upon the registration of the facility within FDA's eDRLS as an MDF or a CMO. Facility user fee rates also vary between each fiscal year. So how is the OMUFA facility fee assessed? Any person that owns a facility identified as an OTC monograph drug facility, including contract manufacturing organization facilities, on December 31st of the fiscal year, or at any time during the preceding 12-month period, shall be assessed and is required to pay a facility fee for that fiscal year. The OMUFA facility fee is assessed per facility. Waivers and reductions to OMUFA facility fees are not authorized under the FD&C Act and thus not available. All facilities pay the same applicable facility fee regardless of business size or business revenue. A facility will be assessed a fiscal year 2023 fee if the facility was identified as an OTC monograph facility in eDRLS at any time from January 1st, 2022 through December 31st, 2022. If your facility qualifies and registers as both an MDF and a CMO, you are only liable for the MDF fee. Thus, the fiscal year 2023 OMUFA facility fee applies to facilities that manufacture or process hand sanitizer products during the COVID-19 public health emergency. Consistent with the Department of Health and Human Services notice published on January 12, 2021, FDA will not assess OMUFA facility fees upon those firms that first registered with FDA on or after the January 27, 2020 declaration of the COVID-19 public health emergency, or PHE, solely for the purposes of manufacturing OTC hand sanitizer products during the PHE. The PHE ended on May 11, 2023, which does not impact the fiscal year 2023 fee liable period, and therefore, those facilities that meet the criteria set forth in the HHS-FRN will remain not fee liable for OMUFA facility fees, as in fiscal years 2021 and 2022. FDA will provide further guidance via our listserv and our website to those hand sanitizer manufacturers registered within FDA's eDRLS. This slide depicts the fiscal year 2023 OMUFA fee rates. For fiscal year 2023, MDF fee is $26,153. CMO fee is $17,435. Again, a CMO pays 2/3 of the amount of the fee paid by an MDF. The fiscal year 2023 Tier 1 OMUR fee is $517,381. The Tier 2 OMUR fee is $103,476. So what is the fee payment process? To submit payment to fulfill your OMUFA user fee obligations, you may access the FDA user fee system to create an OMUFA user fee cover sheet. You need to provide specific information for each fee type. For example, IFEA number of the facility on the cover sheet. Submit the cover sheet to generate a user fee ID number or the cover sheet number, and then pay the appropriate fees. Payment must be made in US currency from a US bank by either pay.gov or wire transfer. For payment made by pay.gov, you may use either an automated clearinghouse electronic check or e-check, or a credit card with a limit amount of under $25,000. For payment made by wire transfer, include the unique user fee ID number to ensure the payment is applied to the correct fees. The originating financial institution may charge a wire transfer fee. Applicable wire transfer fees must be included with payment to ensure fees are fully paid. There are penalties for failure to pay OMUFA user fees. For OMUR fee, if a person owing fees fails to pay the appropriate fees when submitting an OMUR, that OMUR shall be considered incomplete and shall not be accepted for filing. For facility fee, if a facility does not pay the annual facility fee within 20 calendar days of the due date, FDA will place the facility on a publicly available arrears list. Additionally, all OTC monograph drug products produced at that facility or containing an ingredient manufactured at that facility shall be deemed misbranded. Furthermore, OMURs will not be accepted from persons owing fees in arrears, from failure to pay the OMUR or facility fee, and OTC monograph drug meeting requests from persons owing fees will be denied or cancelled. In conclusion, I'd like to summarize the key takeaways from today's presentation. we have discussed the OMUFA statutory background and common OMUFA terms, registration and listing within the electronic drug registration and listing system using current structured product labeling, OMUFA user fee types and fee rates, which include the MDF and CMO facility fees, and Tier 1 and Tier 2 OMUR fees, fee payment process, and lastly, penalties for failure to pay OMUFA user fees. If you would like more information, here is a list of useful resources. This concludes my presentation. Thank you for your time and attention. Now I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for that great presentation, Commander 2. Our next presentation will cover the National Drug Code with a focus on NDC Reservation, the future format of the National Drug Code, and NDC Assignment to drugs. Presenting will be David Mazyck, Consumer Safety Officer, Drug Registration and Listing Branch, Division of Labeling, Registration, and Unapproved Drugs, Office of Compliance. Also, we welcome Julian Chun, Pharmacist, Drug Registration and Listing Branch, Division of Labeling, Registration, and Unapproved Drugs, Office of Compliance. And finally, we welcome back Lieutenant Commander Soo-Jin Park as our final presenter in this session. Please join me to welcome our first presenter, David Mazyck.
Good afternoon and welcome back, folks. My name is David Mazyck, and this afternoon we're going to be reviewing the NDC reservation within the CDER Direct platform. Thank you once again for attending the conference this year. So as a brief overview, we'll briefly discuss who should reserve an NDC, when that NDC should be reserved, and then some of the benefits of an NDC reservation, some of the pros and cons, and then how to reserve an NDC using CDER Direct. Now let's go over some of the goodies, some of the benefits of using the NDC reservation. Obviously, we talked about pre-launch activities, the pre-approval of a particular drug product. This will come in handy when you're printing labels. You can go ahead and place that reserve NDC, and without having any heartburn as to whether or not that product code has been used for another product. It helps alleviate that issue. And then it reserves that NDC for 2 years, so you can sleep at night because that NDC will not be used for another product for 2 years. And then once, as I mentioned to you before, it prevents the duplication and formatting issues that you may come into when submitting for a specific labeler code. Please keep in mind we've always run into configuration issues with stakeholders. Once a configuration has been set under a specific labeler code, then all the products under that particular labeler code need to be in that same config. The two main configurations that we're using now are 541 and 532. And my colleague, Pui Hubert, will go through some of that formally in a later presentation. And then finally, CMOs can reserve an NDC using the PLD's labeler code. And so this comes into play when obviously there are CMOs responsible for submitting this information on behalf of the PLD. So who should reserve an NDC, or who should use this National Drug Code reservation tool? First and foremost, companies or stakeholders that are participating in pre-launch activities, and they want the NDC on the pre-printed labels of a particular product. Secondly, we refer to contract manufacturers or CMOs that are responsible for the PLD's drug listing. And so oftentimes the CMOs do not have the complete inventory of that private label distributor, the complete inventory of NDCs that have already been assigned. So the reservation actually helps these firms reference a NDC number that has not already been used by that PLD. And then finally, for entities that do not know the final characteristics maybe of an oral dosage form, a tablet or capsule, they do not know the final color or some of the marketing status, they're unsure of the final approval of the formulation, and back to the imprint, they may not know the specific characteristics. So this will give them a tool and a way of reserving an NDC for a particular product without having to be linked completely to that NDC going forward. Now let's look at when the NDC reservation should be used. Obviously, when it appears, the NDC appears on the labeling prior to the final approval of the printed labeling. This is a great tool to use so that the end user or the stakeholder will know what NDCs are available to that CMO or that PLD. And then finally, a great point is to distinguish between the NDC reservation and a full-blown drug listing. The NDC reservation has limited fields. We keep it to a minimum to help facilitate reservation, but it does not take the place, nor is it required prior to the listing submission. And then finally, the NDC reservation is solely for products that are intended to be placed into commercial distribution within 2 years. As I mentioned, the labeler code, everything that we're doing now is totally electronic. Back in the olden days, for lack of better terms, during the paper submission, labeler codes were issued via paper, but everything that's sent to the agency in regards to registration and listing is electronic now, as you all are firmly aware of. And so any labeler code that is used for this process, as well as for listing, has to be reconciled or validated within the system. So it has to be a labeler code that has been validated electronically in our system. And now I'll go through some of just the handful of elements that are required, data elements for NDC reservation. Once again, the labeler code and labeler code DUNS, the NDC prod code, and that prod code is just the labeler code along with the product code for that particular drug. Then the name of the drug, the dosage form, marketing status, the reserved until date, and then one active ingredient. Those are the data elements that are required for the NDC reservation. Moving forward, let's go over some of the tips regarding the reservation. Now, obviously, under a specific labeler code, a firm may have multiple products that they want to reserve. They may have multiple NDCs that they want to reserve under one labeler code. So you can submit it under one file. The same NDC reservation SPL file can hold multiple reservations or multiple products. It's synonymous to the establishment registration file, wherein you can submit obviously multiple sites for a specific firm. Once accepted, the proposed NDC or NDCs are reserved. Once that system you've gotten that green light, they are reserved. And keep in mind, the reserve NDC stops at the product level. It does not go down to the package code, and the package code information is not referenced in this NDC reservation file. And the limited data elements help to keep down any confusion and eliminate some of the future error messages or possible error messages. And some additional tips that we'll go over. So the marketing status, which I'll show specifically in the file later on, of all reserved NDCs is either new or reserved. Those are the only statuses that will be reflected in that marketing status page in the initial submission of a particular product. To convert an NDC reservation to a full-blown listing, the marketing status must be switched from reserved to active. And so that change opens up the rest of the listing data elements. And my colleague Troy Q will go over the specific characteristics required for a complete listing record or listing SPL to be submitted. The reserved NDC is no longer, when it's no longer needed or no longer in use, then that marketing status has to be changed by the stakeholder to cancel. And simply by going to that marketing status and changing it from reserved to cancel, that reserved NDC is no longer valid at that time once that change in the marketing status has taken place. Now, canceling NDC is effective on the date of the submission. So if you send it in 10/10/2020, it's effective 10/10/2020, the date of that submission. Obviously, a reserved NDC cannot be used for another reservation and or for a listed product, for listing a future product. It's solely for the product that it was intended to reserve for. And so that's a feature that we want to maintain to keep down, again, configuration problems and problems with the listing multiple products listed under one NDC. So some key factors or key facts. NDC reservation is not a full-blown listing. As you can see, there are limited data elements that are required for NDC reservation versus a completed listing. The data is not published, and because it's not a proper listing. So you will not see this information on Daily Med, nor will you see it on the National Drug Code. Keep in mind, those two systems are for products typically that are in commercial distribution and are active, viable products in the marketplace. This is something that's reserved prior to. Again, the effective date is the submission date. They coincide. And finally, from that reserved NDC is set aside solely for 2 years. So you have to use that NDC in that two-year time frame, or it's set aside during that 2-year time frame. From beyond that, from the effective date 2 years out, is then removed. So finally, we get to the actual registration. I'm just going to show you guys a few of the screenshots. From your main page on the left-hand side, you would select NDC reservation. And as you can see, I have a draft there. And then to the next slide, your header details, your set ID, root ID, these are all generated by the system. Then your version number that you would put in, and the effective date. Keep in mind, from 2 years from that effective date, that this particular file or NDC will expire. On the next page, you'll go into your registration details, and below you'll see the actual where you would enter in your product information. And since this is a draft version, I'm going to click on the product information that some of it that I've already entered in. And as you can see, everything that is required obviously will be denoted by these little red red notifications. And so those fields are required fields for the product data elements and for an NDC reservation. We move down to the marketing details, and then here's where you would change, obviously, the status for this particular reservation, and then provide the actual reservation until date. And keep in mind, again, that's 2 years out. Below that would be the specific marketing category for this product, and from that standpoint, you have to be specific as to what marketing category the particular product displays. The next page will refer to the actual ingredient. Keep in mind, for an NDC reservation, at minimum, you have to put in one active ingredient. And you can see how the required fields are denoted once again. And we have a handful of challenge questions that we need to review. First challenge question is, NDC reservation is required to facilitate the listing submission. Is that true or false? That is false. The NDC reservation is not required to facilitate the listing submission. It's a tool set aside to do what it states and to reserve an NDC temporarily. Next question. The reservation date may be up to 2 years after the effective date. And that is true. From that initial date, you have 2 years to reserve that specific NDC for that specific drug product. And finally, the reservation data is published on the NDC directory. And obviously that is false, merely because the NDC reservation, as you've seen in previous screens, is not a complete submission. So, and those products are not currently in commercial distribution. What should be reflected on directory is obviously a complete listing that is in commercial distribution. I hope everyone enjoyed this session and hopefully it was informative. If you have any questions or suggestions on how we could fine-tune things in the future, please reach out to the staff at the email address listed on the slide. Thank you.
Thank you for that introduction. My presentation is on the format of the National Drug Code, as well as the proposed rule we have out, revising that format. So my goals for you guys for this presentation is I hope you guys will be able to define the NDC, what it is, what's the current format, and then provide an overview of the proposed rule revising that format, and also the proposed implementation timeline for all the changes. So what is the NDC? The NDC is the unique identifier for drug products in the United States. So for most drugs, you can find the NDC on the labeling, and it can also sometimes be part of the UPC, the barcode. But the NDC is requested but not mandated on all labeling. So you may not see it, especially OTC products. However, all drug products are required to have an NDC on record with us at FDA. So for those of you guys that use NDC, you're probably familiar with the fact that it's quote-unquote a smart number. And what that means is that each segment means something, has some sort of meaning. So the first segment is the labeler code, and that code is assigned to a specific firm. The middle segment is the product code, and that designates the drug strength type. The last segment is the package code, and that designates the package quantity, type, and size. So the NDC actually has 3 formats. So the original format is the 442 format, which has 4 digits in the labeler code, 4 digits in the product code, and 2 digits in the package code. When we ran out of 4-digit labeler codes, we started assigning 5-digit labeler codes. But in order to keep the NDC as 10 digits, we decided to truncate either the product code or the package code. So in the 532 format, there's one less digit in the product code, and in the 541 format, as you see in the example here, there's one less digit in the package code. So now you guys must be thinking, did he just say NDC is 10 digits? I'm pretty sure NDC is 11 digits. Well, the reason you're thinking that is because there's a HIPAA format NDC. And in the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, they adopted a uniform 11-digit NDC that's to be used in all the HIPAA-covered transactions. So this 11-digit NDC standardizes the NDC into a 542 format. So they take the FDA-assigned NDC, that's 10 digits, and they convert it by adding a leading 0 to the applicable short segment. That's a mouthful, so this is a schematic to show you how that's done. So in that example, in the 542 format, you can see that the package code here is the short segment. So you would add a leading 0 in the package code. In the 532 format, the short segment is the product code. So you would add the leading 0 in the product code. And in the 442 format, the short segment is the labeler code, and that's where you would add the extra leading 0. So I just finished telling you that when we ran out of 4-digit labeler codes, we started assigning 5-digit labeler codes. Well, what will happen now once we run out of 5-digit labeler codes? Well, under the current regulations, once we run out of 5-digit labeler codes, we will start assigning 6-digit labeler codes. And there is no plan to truncate any more of the other product or package codes. So with 6-digit labeler codes, the new NDCs will be 11 digits and would be required in one of the two new formats, which is 632 or 641. So why are we issuing this proposed rule now? Well, we have about 10 to 15 years of available 5-digit labeler codes left. And what's going to happen with that is that the proposed rule is intended to minimize this impact of the transition, because a timing uncertainty, when we don't know when we're going to run out, and when we run out and we start doing that and nobody knows about it, that might increase the conversion and the impact of it. And then moving on to a 6-digit labeler code in the new format will add 2 additional formats. So there's a lot of changes going on. And there's also an emerging situation in that if we, without the change, there's going to be 5 formats. So there's 3 and 10 digits, 2 and 11 digits, and then the FDA assigned 11 digits may cause confusion with the existing 11-digit HIPAA converted NDCs. And healthcare systems and payers currently convert 10-digit NDCs to 11 digits, which increases costs and may be a factor in medication errors. And then what we are afraid might also happen is there is a potential for a possible collision of a HIPAA converted NDC. So you see this is a 541 format, right here, 541 format with the leading 0 added, and without hyphens it is this number right here, and then a newly assigned FDA number with a unique NDC number with hyphens, but without hyphens it is the same number. So you can just imagine how crazy it would be to have two NDCs that with two different products. So we definitely don't want that to happen. So who would be impacted by these changes? Basically everyone involved in the healthcare industry using NDCs. So these are just some examples of who would be impacted by them. So this proposed rule, what are we proposing exactly? So if finalized, we are proposing to update the length of the NDC. So instead of instead of 10 digits, we're expanding it to 12 digits. And what we're also doing is we're allowing for the barcode labeling requirements to use linear and non-linear. So it will allow for different formats because the UPC code, the linear barcode you're seeing, can only encode 10 digits, and 12 digits will be too much for that. So we're allowing for other non-linear forms aside from just the linear one. And in this example, down at the bottom, the 541 format, in order to convert the formats, you would add a leading 0 to the short segment and a leading 0 to make it 12 digits. So basically the HIPAA format with the leading 0 at the labeler code section. So why we came up with this proposed rule is we think it has some benefits associated with it. The first one would be that it would create a standardized format, which would then eliminate the need for conversions from FDA format to HIPAA format, and vice versa. It would also eliminate the need to convert NDCs all the time. That's what's happening now. That creating confusion and medication errors. And then this proposed rule also would begin, once we begin issuing it, would be more certainty to stakeholders as when they need to have their systems ready. So by this date, it needs to be ready. So this is the timeline of when things should happen. So we are actually about right here with the proposed rule and comment period. So the proposed rule was published last year. The comment period ended in November of last year. So we are in the process of analyzing all those comments and getting ready to draft this final rule. So how this is going to go is we're going to publish the final rule. There's going to be a delayed effective date of 5 years. And then once the effective date hits, there'll be a 3-year transition period. And I have more slides that will explain this more. So as I said, the final rule would include an effective date, but that effective date will be delayed by 5 years. So this is when everything needs to be changed. That's the effective date, and it's delayed by 5 years. And then it also provides for a 3-year transition period to facilitate a smooth transition. And what I mean by that is that if everybody had to convert and on an effective date and everything had to be converted, then everything would have to be relabeled. So during this 3-year transition period, old labels can still be around, and so we're not asking all the manufacturers to recall and relabel everything, so minimizing the relabeling costs. We also didn't want to create an artificial drug shortage due to the timing of product release. So say we were nearing the effective date, then we didn't want manufacturers holding on to product and then releasing it after because they didn't want to pull and relabel their old products. And then we also wanted to limit the time frame where there's two coexisting labeling with two different formats. So that's why we chose 3 years for that. Regarding the effective date, what's supposed to happen is if finalized as proposed, then FDA will convert all NDCs to 12 digits. So now all NDC is no longer 10 digits, it's 12 digits. And then we will begin assigning 6-digit labeler codes in the new 12-digit format. And on this date, all the stakeholders must be capable of handling this new uniform 12-digit NDC, and firms should start labeling their drugs that were assigned 10-digit NDCs with 12-digit NDCs. And all drug listing submissions would be required to use this new 12-digit format. So during this transition period, so after effective date, FDA, we are going to publish both the 10 and 12 digits so that there's people can compare and have a reference to what the converted NDC is. We're also not gonna object to drugs that were previously assigned a 10-digit NDC to continue to be labeled with 10-digit NDC. So we're not asking people to recall, relabel, and re-release their products during this transition period. But we do encourage manufacturers and distributors to include this 12-digit NDC on their labeling as soon as possible after the effective date. But definitely no later than when they run out of existing labeling and begin printing new labeling. So definitely as soon as possible after the effective date, don't delay. So because at the end of this transition period, the 3 years, all drug products would be required to be in this NDC 12-digit format, and we will no longer be exercising any enforcement discretion with respect to NDCs not being in the correct new format. So just some things that stakeholders need to prepare for and implement. Operating systems, obviously, if finalized, they have to be ready to accommodate for the expanded NDC on the effective date. And then plans need to happen for labeling and the annual reports that need to be submitted for that in preparation for the effective date. And then in drug listing, the confirmation of the new format of your NDC will need to happen, and then update the labeling you have in your drug listing once you have that approved and labeled. So as I mentioned, we received 49 comments. We are going through that, and you can actually view them on regulations.gov and see what people are saying about it. And then if you wanted to read the proposed rule, it was published in the Federal Register notice, so you can look it up under that docket number 1351. And then, 1351. And then for those of you guys interested in the regulatory impact analysis that we did for this rule, that's also a link there for that. Okay, so let's see how much you guys learned. How good of a job did I do? All right, your first challenge question. The HIPAA 11-digit NDC is converted how? By adding a leading 0 at the beginning, or maybe adding a tailing 0 at the end? Do you add it a leading 0 in the short segment of the NDC? Or just add an extra digit anywhere? What is it? Yeah, correct. A leading 0 in the short segment, whether that's in the labeler code, the product code, or the package code. That's where you add the leading 0. Okay. Now, the length of the transition period, what is it? Is it 5 years, 3 years, 8 years, 12 years? That's right, it's 3 years. And this is kind of a little bit of a tricky question because it's once the rule is finalized, the effective date is delayed by 5 years. So you have 5 years to implement, plan, and implement. But once that effective date happens, you only have 3 years to transition the NDC to the expanded format. So that's a total of 8 years, and all the firms are asking us for 12 years or longer, but we don't have that many NDCs, and we don't want to run out before this is done. So that is the case. All right, so I thank you guys for listening to this. Since this rule is in the proposed rule stage, I'm not allowed to answer too many questions about it. I can clarify anything that I did say in the presentation if you guys have questions about that. So I will be available in the question and answer section for that. And you can answer your questions, and if I can ask your question, and if I can answer it, I will. All right, thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining me for the second time today. In this session, I will cover the topic of NDC assignment to drugs. Here are some learning objectives. In this session, we will determine how NDCs are assigned and look at what changes require a new NDC. In addition, we will review products that require an NDC and products that should not use an NDC. I'm sure all of us have been to a drugstore to purchase an over-the-counter product or have taken prescription drugs. As a pharmacist myself, I see NDCs everywhere. Here are some visual representations of where you might see the NDCs. As it was mentioned by previous presenters, drugs are identified and reported using the National Drug Code, NDC, which serves as the FDA's universal product identifier for drugs. However, if you do not see an NDC on a drug label, it doesn't mean that it hasn't been assigned one, since the inclusion of an NDC is not a requirement. But we at FDA nonetheless request that the NDCs are included on the package labeling of all prescription and non-prescription drugs. I know that by now you are all probably an expert in what NDC is and different segments of NDC. However, I am including this slide on 3 segments of NDC because it is such an essential part of NDC assignment. So there are 3 segments of NDC, and each segment represents something. First segment is the labeler code, and labeler code is assigned to a specific firm or company. Second segment is the product code, and that identifies specific drug and its strength. And the last segment is the package code, and it represents different packaging type, size, and quantity. As my colleague Julian has mentioned in his presentation, currently there are 3 NDC configurations, which are 442, 532, and 541. The FDA assigns labeler codes to the manufacturers, distributors, or private label distributors of the product. And as I mentioned in my labeler code request live demonstration from earlier this morning, the first step for the assignment of an NDC number is to obtain a labeler code from the FDA. Here's an example of a made-up drug bottle where you can see the NDC number assigned to drug named Miraculozide and its strength, 100 milligrams, and packaging information, which is 100 capsules. So how are NDCs assigned? When a registrant first submits a drug listing, the registrant will propose an NDC for that drug. If that NDC has not already been used, FDA will assign the proposed NDC to that drug. It is important to remember that NDC assignment is a separate process from the drug approval process. For drugs that are subject to FDA review and approval under a new drug application, biologics license application, abbreviated new drug application, or associated supplements, verification of NDC assignment is not typically part of the review and approval process. Also, my colleague David went over the NDC reservation earlier in this session. NDC is proposed by companies and isn't assigned during the drug approval process. And I'd like to mention that if your drug is waiting approval and you are printing labeling to include NDCs on it, then you can reserve the NDCs ahead of time for drugs in development. Per 21 CFR 20735, once an NDC has been assigned by FDA, the registrant must propose a new and unique NDC for a drug when there is a change after the drug is initially marketed. The proposed new NDC must include a new product code when there is a change to any of the following information. 1. The drug's established name or proprietary name. 2. Any active pharmaceutical ingredient, API, or the strength of any API. 3. The dosage form. 4. A change in the drug status between prescription and non-prescription, or for animal drugs between prescription, non-prescription, or veterinary feed directive status. 5. A change in the drug's intended use between human and animal. Lastly, the drug's physical characteristics such as size, shape, color, code and print, flavor, and scoring. In addition to all these detailed items included in 20735, we also expect to see new NDC product codes in certain situations. For example, in co-packaged drugs or kits, a change in any drug component will require a new NDC product code for the kit. Also, in the case of drugs that contain the same concentration of active ingredients but are available in different strengths or deliver different doses, should use different product codes. With respect to the package codes, different package sizes and types for a drug cannot share the same package code under the same labeler code and product code. For example, blister packs included in a carton should be assigned a different package code than the package code assigned to the carton. Drugs that contain the same concentration of active ingredients but are available in multi-dose packaging that are measured per healthcare provider or labeling dosage instructions should be assigned the same product code. Different packaging sizes of drug products should be assigned different package codes. For example, a 3-ounce bottle of an oral solution of 20 milligrams per 5 ml should be assigned the same product code and a different package code than a 4-ounce bottle of the same oral solution with the same concentration of active ingredient. Additionally, if a drug is packaged in different container materials like glass or plastic containers, different package codes should be used to distinguish the different container types. So what products require assignment of NDCs? Drugs that are required to be listed under Section 510 of the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act may use an NDC without being deemed misbranded under 20737. This includes all human prescription and non-prescription drugs, whether approved or unapproved, biological products, combination products that include either a drug or biological product constituent part and are assigned to CDER or CBER, and also drug samples. For biologic products, one exception is that under 21 CFR 207-33B4, an alternatively formatted NDC that is approved for use by the relevant center director may be used for the following human cells, tissues, and cellular and tissue-based products if they are minimally manipulated. Hematopoietic stem progenitor cells derived from peripheral and core blood and lymphocytes collected from peripheral blood. Now, what products should not use an NDC? An NDC or other identifier similar to NDC, such as the National Health Related Item Code, NRIC, has been historically assigned to different categories of non-drugs for identification and reimbursement purposes. However, as its name implies, NDC assignment is limited to drugs. Products may be deemed misbranded under 207-37A3 if an NDC is used on products that are not subject to drug registration and listing requirements, such as medical devices, medical foods, dietary supplements, and cosmetics. If an NDC is assigned to these products or an NDC is included in its labeling, then the products may be deemed to be misbranded. I would like to conclude my presentation by sharing with you that the FDA's acceptance of registration and listing information, inclusion of a drug in our database of drugs, or assignment of an NDC does not denote approval of the establishment or the drug or any other drugs of the establishment, nor does it mean that the drug may be legally marketed. Under 21 CFR 207-77B, any representation that creates the impression that a drug is approved or is legally marketable because it appears in our database of drugs has been assigned or display an NDC, or the establishment has been assigned an establishment registration number or unique facility identifier, is misleading and constitutes misbranding. Now let's test your knowledge. Here's your challenge question number 1. True or false? A new product code is required when there is a change in route of administration. I'll give you about 10 seconds. Here's your answer. I know this answer may surprise you, but the answer is B, false. The reason it wasn't included in the regs and doesn't apply to route of administration because there are products that have multiple route of administration, such as injectables that can be used subcutaneously or IM, etc. And the second challenge question is, which of the following may not use an NDC? A, medical devices, B, unapproved drug, C, prescription drug, D, OTC products. The correct answer is A, medical devices. This concludes my portion of the presentation. Thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you for those great presentations. Our final group of presentations before our break will be on our registration and listing compliance program, discussing untitled letters and warning letters, data inactivation, data removals and flags, and downstream effects. Our presenters for this session include Tasneem Hussain, pharmacist, Drug Registration and Listing Branch, Division of Labeling, Registration, and Unapproved Drugs, Office of Compliance. And we welcome back Vikas Arora and Leila Raju Isfandiari as our final presenter. Please join me to welcome our first presenter in this session, Tasneem Hussain.
Good afternoon, and thank you for attending this afternoon's sessions. In this presentation, we will discuss some important information regarding registration and listing untitled letters and warning letters. We will identify untitled letters and warning letters, and when they're issued, we will identify the steps to address and close untitled letters and warning letters. We will discuss the manual override process, We will discuss the importance and impacts of the untitled letters and warning letters, and we will discuss tips to avoid the untitled letters and warning letters. Before we get into talking about untitled letters and warning letters, we need to go over a little background on our registration and listing compliance program. This will help us understand these two types of letters. Our registration and listing compliance program started in 2015, and our mission has been to protect and promote the public health by trying to maintain a complete and accurate database of the registration and listing data. We try to achieve this by doing reviews of the data, sometimes focused reviews, sometimes random reviews. When we find errors or any kind of discrepancies in the registration and listing data, then we issue the firms a deficiency letter. In these letters, we state the deficiencies that we found and ask the firm to make the corrections. If after 30 days have passed, the firm does not correct the data, then we remove the incorrect data from the NDC directory and then make the decision whether to send an untitled letter or a warning letter. And if this still does not result in any correction of the data, then we move towards inactivation of the incorrect data. Untitled letters and warning letters are a type of official communication from FDA. These letters are issued to registrants or labelers who do not respond to our initial deficiency letters that we spoke about in the previous slide. Violation of statutory requirements results in issuance of a warning letter, as these are errors that are a little more severe in nature. And violation of registration and listing regulations under 21 CFR 207 will result in the issuance of an untitled letter. So untitled letters are not posted in any public website, and these errors are a little less severe than those of the warning letter. A little bit more about warning letters. Once a warning letter is issued to the firm, the letter is posted in FDA's warning letter webpage. The site is updated once a week, and the link of the warning letter will appear there with the date of the issuance. And the letter is available for public view. We also provide a copy and link of the warning letter that we issue in our compliance program webpage. To date, we have issued over 21 warning letters, and a couple of them include both registration and listing violations, but most of them include listing violations. Here are some examples of when we may issue an untitled letter. Drug listing issues such as incorrect NDC or incorrect strength of active ingredient, or incorrect marketing category, or incorrect document type, or possible errors that, if not corrected in the specified time, this may result in the firm getting an untitled letter. Some errors are likely to result in a warning letter if corrections are not made. So, for example, errors such as failure to register the manufacturing establishment or failure to list a drug that a firm is manufacturing for commercial distribution, or including an incorrect or unauthorized U.S. agent in a firm's registration SPL. Some examples of listing issues that may result in a warning letter include incorrect establishment or missing establishment, incorrect package insert or carton label image, incorrect or missing active ingredient. Here are the steps to address and close the untitled letters or warning letters. If a firm receives untitled letters or warning letters, it's best to address them quickly and make the corrections and resubmit the file. Make sure to send us the core ID or the submission ID for the review. We will need to see these files and check to make sure that there are no new errors generated and that all the errors that were identified in the letters sent to the firm are corrected. And most likely, corrections to the errors in the untitled letter or warning letter will likely need manual override before the file can be accepted. The manual override process. The compliance officer will review the corrections, as we mentioned, and make sure everything is corrected and no new errors are generated and everything is acceptable. And once all the errors are addressed, CDER will approve the manual override. We will then forward the submission to SPL coordinator who will manually load the data. Once updated and corrected, the file is uploaded and the case is closed. So closeout letters are issued for resolved warning letters. Untitled letters do not get a closeout letter, but the data is just released back for publication, and the status will change to active, current, and certified. Why may an untitled letter or warning letter be important, or what impacts can these letters have? If an untitled letter or warning letter is not resolved, the data will remain out of the public NDC directory. The SPL, which include the drug product that is included in the warning letter, will be indexed in the NIH's Daily Med publication. The incorrect data is associated with the untitled letter or warning letter will be inactivated at the next scheduled inactivation period. If the data in the untitled letter or warning letter are not corrected, then the compliance case remains open, and this could cause possible delays with product importation. Here's some tips to avoid untitled letters and warning letters. First and foremost, follow the registration and listing requirements under 21 CFR 207. Then it's important to learn the latest automated validation rules. Make sure the registration and labeler contact information submitted to us in the SPLs is up to date and current. And then respond to the deficiency letter with corrections within 30 days. Now, if you are paying attention, these two challenge questions will be very, very easy to answer. Our first question is, which of the following may be reasons to issue an untitled letter? A, drug not listed. B, incorrect NDC. C, unregistered establishment. D, incorrect active ingredient. We'll give you a few seconds to think of this. The answer to question number 1 is B, incorrect NDC. The other 3 would likely result in a warning letter. Challenge question number 2. Which of the following statement is correct? A, closeout letters are issued after firm makes corrections in response to an untitled letter. B, untitled letters are posted on FDA web pages. C, when requesting a manual override, firms need to send FDA the core ID or the submission ID. D, failure to register an establishment may lead to an untitled letter. We'll give you a few seconds to think of this one. Answer to question number 2 is C. When requesting a manual override, firms need to send the FDA the core ID or the submission ID. So in a few short statements to summarize, untitled letters and warning letters are official communications that are issued to firms who do not comply with the registration and listing requirements. Firms are legally required to submit correct and complete information to FDA. It's important to quickly review and respond to deficiency letters and to untitled letters and warning letters if firms receive them. This helps us in maintaining the data integrity of our drug registration and listing database. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions, we'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Tasneem, for your presentation. My name is Vikas Arora, and I'm back again to present on data inactivation. Here are the learning objectives for this presentation. We're going to discuss drug listing requirements. We're going to describe annual certification requirements. We're going to discuss the drug inactivation and Federal Register notice. We're going to describe the data inactivation timelines. We're going to go over the 2 inactivation periods, which is January and July. And then we're going to go over inactivation that occurs due to a compliance case. So what are the drug listing requirements? Section 510B of the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act requires that establishments register and renew their registration annually during the October to December annual renewal period. Section 510J of the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act requires that registrants provide a list of all drugs manufactured for commercial distribution at the time of registration. And then Section 510J2D of the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act requires that registrants send in any material changes to any listing already on file every June or December each year. So pursuant to 21 CFR 207.57B2, after initial electronic listing, registrants may satisfy the listing update requirement with respect to unchanged listing information by making a single no changes certification during the annual registration update under 207.29B applicable to all of the registrants' listed drugs for which no changes have been made since the previous annual registration update. So this is the blanket no change certification that we talked about in the earlier presentation. Again, if your drug listing was updated during the current calendar year, then the drug listing is certified, and a blanket no change certification is not required during the annual certification window. So the Data Inactivation FR notice was first published on October 14, 2019, and shortly thereafter in September went into effect. So the Data Inactivation FR notice states that 30 days after publication of this notice and every January thereafter, FDA will begin to inactivate human drug listings that remain uncertified from the previous renewal period of October 1st to December 31st. In addition, every July thereafter, FDA will begin to inactivate human drug listings that remain active and certified after the June listing update but still contain at least one establishment that is not currently registered in accordance with FDA's requirements. So as the FRN states, there are two inactivation periods, one in January and one in July. And the intent of these inactivation periods is to keep our data as accurate and up to date as possible. So prior to these data inactivations, we do send a notification email to the labeler points of contact with the estimated date of inactivation if no updates are made. So please verify that your labeler code SPL has the most up-to-date contact information, because that is what we use to contact regarding the data inactivation notification. So let's go over the different inactivations. The first one is the January inactivation, and this is due to missing the October to December annual certification window or not updating your SPL during the current calendar year. If you receive an inactivation notification email, a new version of the drug listing SPL must be submitted with any updates in order to reactivate or correct the data depending on the situation. So what do you do if you receive a January inactivation notification email? Well, this depends on your specific situation. If your drug is still in commercial distribution, then a blanket no change certification cannot be completed because the annual certification period has ended, and you must submit a new version of the SPL for each drug listing using the same set ID. If the drug is no longer in commercial distribution, you still need to submit an updated SPL providing a completed marketing status and an end marketing date. If you've been inactivated and you're no longer in commercial distribution, this does not exempt you from your responsibilities for updating your drug listing. So why does the July inactivation occur? So drug listing files that remain active and certified after the June listing update, but contain at least one establishment that's not duly registered with FDA. So 21 CFR 207.57B states registrants must review and update their drug listing information each June and December. So FDA allows companies with active drug listings until the June update deadline to get their establishment registered or identify a new one. If the update is not made by the June requirement, in July, we inactivate those drug listings, which are still linked to the unregistered establishment. So what do you do if you receive the July inactivation notification email? First, assess all the establishments that are in your listing. In order to assess your establishment registration status, please refer to the Drug Establishment Current Registration Site, or DECRS. So if your drug is in commercial distribution but it's being manufactured at a different facility, you must provide a new version of the drug listing SPL, identifying the new manufacturing establishment and removing the old ones or the ones that are no longer being used. If your drug is still in distribution but the manufacturer failed to renew the registration, you must either update the establishment registration for the existing establishment or contact the registrant referenced in the drug listing and notify them of the need to renew its registration with the FDA. If a drug is no longer being manufactured for distribution, again, inactivation does not exempt a firm from their listing update responsibilities. They must submit an updated SPL with a completed marketing status that includes an end marketing date. So inactivation due to compliance case. Compliance cases can be created any time of year due to incorrect data regarding labeler codes, establishment registration, or drug listing data. Unresolved compliance cases can lead to data inactivation if not resolved in a timely manner. So what are consequences of inactivation? This can cause removal of the drug listing from FDA publications. This can be flagged in DailyMed. And this can cause CMS reimbursement issues due to the inactivation dates being transmitted to the NSDE file. So how do we resolve data inactivation? Once inactivation has occurred, a new SPL submission is required to be submitted for the drug listing. Once submitted, it can take 24 to 48 hours for it to be reactivated. This can be even longer if the inactivation is due to a compliance case, as the new SPL needs to be manually reviewed. And the data will not be reactivated until the case is closed. And it can take another 24 hours for reactivated data to be republished in databases. Now let's go over some challenge questions. Challenge question number 1. Material changes to any drug listing on file are required every A, January and February, B, October and December, C, January and July, or D, June and December. And the answer is D, June and December. Challenge question number 2. Drug listing data inactivation occurs every A, January and February, B, October and December, C, January and July, or D, June and December. And the answer is C, January and July. In summary, please review your drug listings often for any changes or updates. Please make sure your labeler code contact information is correct as we reach out to this point of contact for the data inactivation notifications. Please note that data inactivation does not fulfill the obligation for the firm to delist. We encourage the firm to add an end marketing date and add a complete marketing status for their drug listings if they are no longer manufacturing their drug for commercial distribution. If a data inactivation notification is received, please take the necessary steps to avoid inactivation. If your data is inactivated, please submit an updated SPL in order to reactivate your listing. Thank you for your attention, and now I'd like to pass the presentation to my colleague, Layla.
Hello everyone, thank you for joining this session. In this presentation, I will be talking about data removals and flags. These are our objectives for the presentation. We will identify the types of data removal actions. We will identify the online publications where the data is removed from, and we will be able to identify the flags that are associated with the data that is removed in the different online publications. Registration data removal. So data that we will be discussing here can be the registration data sent to us by the registrants or drug listing data that is sent to us. As far as the registration data, this is the establishment data, and this is what can be removed either by the firm or by the firm's representatives or by FDA. The firm can deregister the establishment, or if they go out of business, or sometimes a particular establishment may get dropped from the latest registration SPL. And this is how registration data can be removed by the firm. FDA can also remove registration data. This can happen if a firm fails to renew their registration during the annual registration period, which is October to December. yearly, the establishment is expired and the data is removed. If the firm does not respond to and does not correct errors associated with the compliance case, and if we send the deficiency letters to the firms, the FDA can remove the registration data also. Also, the registration data can be removed because of inactivation that happens during the inactivation period. Drug listing data can also be removed either by the firm submitting the information or by FDA again. A firm may delist the product once a product reaches its end marketing date. That product is no longer in active or current status. FDA can remove the data also if the firm fails to respond to our drug listing deficiency letters and fails to correct the errors we identified in those letters. Drug listing data can also be removed by FDA during the inactivation periods. During the January inactivation period, FDA will inactivate the products that were not updated in the previous year or products that were not certified to be active by December 31st of the year. Then FDA will inactivate those listings during the January inactivation period. During the July inactivation period, FDA can inactivate drug listing data for listing submissions that include an expired establishment. So these are the ways that drug listing data can be removed. Data removal from online publications. So let's identify some sites where registration or listing data can be removed from. Establishment data can be removed from the Drug Establishment Current Registration site, or we call it DECRS for short. As you're probably aware, this is where the registration data is stored. So as we mentioned earlier, if the firm deregisters or gets out of business, for example, then the establishment data is removed from the site. Drug listing data is removed from the National Drug Code Directory, since this is where the listing data is stored for public view. The listings that are expired will no longer show up in this directory. So two other sites where listing data can be removed from are DailyMed and the NSDE files. The DailyMed is managed by NIH, and if there are egregious data errors, the listing data can be removed from this site. The NSDE file is the NDC SPL data elements file, and this is utilized by CMS, and this file includes inactivation or reactivation dates. And note that both of these databases are populated through the listing data. So now we'll talk about flags, registration removal flags. A flag is an alert, or it points to a status or lets you know that something is up with the data that you're seeing or should be seeing in your search results. So when registration data is removed from the DECRS site, you may see the E flag or the I flag. The E flag would show up at the top of the search results screen if there was an error in the establishment registration data and the data was removed. For example, if there was a compliance case associated with the registration data and the firm did not correct that error, then the establishment is removed from the DECRS site, and you would see the E. You should see the E there. If also you would see an I flag on the screen, which would indicate that the viewer that the establishment data for this firm was removed via inactivation because of a registration compliance issue. So listing removal flags. Flags you will see in the NDC directory include the E and the U and the I. For if there was an E that shows up at the top, this means that the product listing data has been removed from the NDC directory for failure to respond to FDA's requests for correction to deficient or non-compliant data. The U flag would appear if the listing data was expired due to lack of certification. The U flag is usually a temporary flag. It would appear only after the certification period ended and the listing wasn't certified, so the data would have the U flag. But once the listing gets inactivated, then the U would not be there anymore, and you would see the I flag. The I flag would show you that the data was removed from the NDC directory because it was inactivated. And this is included in the excluded file, and it refers to the listing data that was inactivated. So this is an example where DailyMed site would show you the I flag. there would be an I, and the listing data was inactivated by FDA would be shown at the top. So we have come to challenge question number 1. Which of the following can be a reason for listing data removal? A, inclusion of a current establishment registration in a drug listing. B, failure to submit a drug listing within 2 years. C, failure to respond to a listing deficiency letter. D, none of these are reasons for the listing data removal. I'll give you a few seconds to think about this. The answer to question number 1 is C, failure to respond to a listing deficiency letter. So we have challenge question number 2. Where does the E flag appear? Is it A, the NDC directory, B, DailyMed, C, Deckers, D, answers A and C are both correct? We'll give you a few seconds to think about this one. So the answer is D. The NDC directory and Deckers can both show the E flag. So here's a little summary. Registration and listing data can be removed from the online publications for failure to comply with registration and listing regulations, failure to correct, respond, and correct to the identified errors in the deficiency letters, failure to renew a registration for an establishment, or failure to certify the listed products as active. The flags available on the NDC directory and Deckers alert viewers of status of the data. So we have come to the questions. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions, we'll be happy to answer them now. Thank you.
Thank you, Drs. Arora and Hussain, for talking about our compliance projects and initiatives. I will try to cover some of the downstream effects of those deficiencies and omissions in the registration and listing data and how they can create real-life problems for our public health. Upon completion of this presentation, you should be able to identify the registration and listing online publications, describe ways to report data discrepancies to FDA, and list potential real-life examples caused by data deficiency. The registration data is submitted by companies. It is stored in FDA internal systems after it passes the automated validations, and then gets published in Deckers or drug establishment current registration site. The listing data is also submitted by companies, gets stored in FDA internal databases for reporting purposes, and then is disseminated for online publications. Some of the online publications that use listing data directly or indirectly are NDC Directory, Drugs at FDA, FDA Label, DailyMed, and the NSDE file. The registration and listing data is widely used inside and outside of the agency. In FDA, registration and listing data is a key contributing factor in facility inspection planning and determining what manufacturing activities actually take place in the establishment and what kind of products are manufactured there. In assessing statutory facility fees, as you heard in an earlier presentation today, in preventing and remediating drug shortage cases, and in drug safety assessments. Outside of FDA, many other government agencies use our data. For example, the Drug Enforcement Agency, Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, Department of Veteran Affairs, and etc., as well as private and academic sectors for supply chain security, research, prescribing, and healthcare records. In the next few slides, I will talk about some examples on how data integrity can have a direct downstream effect in some major topics. An incorrect or incomplete site address or failure to update registration data upon relocation of an establishment can cause inspection problems and delays, and is in violation of Section 510 of the FD&C Act, which can misbrand the drugs manufactured at that facility. As you can see, the data from FDA's calendar year 2022 annual report on inspections of establishments, FDA inspects thousands of drug manufacturing establishments globally. The recent numbers are actually not indicative of a normal year due to travel restrictions over the pandemic. CDER has to be able to rely on this data to plan those inspections. A delay in inspections can cause problems for both FDA and industry, such as delays in drug approval due to problems with pre-approval inspections. Patient safety is at utmost importance for FDA and healthcare industry at large. An inaccurate listing, specifically an incorrect NDC assignment in this example, can lead to medication error. In this example, the product is co-packaged and includes two vials, drug A and drug B. Drug A and drug B do not contain the same active ingredient, but include the same NDC product on the label. The physician order directed the nurse to inject drug B 2 hours later than drug A is injected. Instead of drug B, patient was injected with an additional dose of drug A. In an annual report, a drug labeling is updated to include a black box warning or drug-drug interaction. Healthcare providers rely on labeling information to make key decisions about prescribing a drug. In this example, if the labeling is not updated in drug listing, information on a recently added black box warning or drug-drug interaction can be missed by the prescribing physician. The listing information submitted to FDA is also used by CMS and the payer industry for reimbursement, as well as by FDA and pharma for drug amount reporting. If the information in the packaging section of the listing SPL includes incorrect or incomplete data, or is omitting key information, for example, a description, size, and NDC for an inner level packaging that is available ordinarily for prescribing, it could lead to reimbursement errors or incorrect drug amount reporting to FDA under Section 510 of the Act. As our keynote speaker, Jill Furman, mentioned in her presentation this morning, registration and listing plays a key role in our safety initiatives to prevent incidents related to substandard, falsified, and harmful drugs. Two of those initiatives were in response to the global diethylene glycol and ethylene glycol contamination incidents and FDA's ophthalmic drug initiative. Now let's have a poll question. Choosing options A or B, please respond if this statement is true or false. It is in the best interest of the pharmaceutical company as well as public health to submit correct registration and listing data to FDA. Is it A, true, or B, false? Let's give it a few seconds. Great. So everyone who answered A is going to get an A+. It is always in the best interest of all parties that the registration and listing data is submitted correctly to FDA. If you're using any of our online publications for registration and listing data and you find a discrepancy, what do? You can contact us at eDRLS@fda.hhs.gov or another group that works very closely with us, Division of Drug Information, at druginfo@fda.hhs.gov. Before closing, we're going to have two challenge questions. Challenge number one is, which one of these publications is managed by FDA? A, Comprehensive NDC SPL Data Elements File. B, Drug Establishment Current Registration Site. C, neither. Or D, both. I'll give you a few seconds to answer the question. And the answer is both of these. The first one is the NSDE file, and the second one is what we call Decker's, which publishes the registration information. On challenge question 2, which of the following statement is not true? A, anyone can contact FDA about data discrepancy found in its published registration and listing data. B, FDA can make corrections to its online published registration and listing data. C, FDA's listing data is used by other government agencies for coding, reimbursement, prescribing, and dispensing of drugs. D, NDC assignment is not part of drug approval, but is an important safety aspect of a drug. Again, let's wait another few seconds. And the answer is B. FDA cannot make any corrections to its online published registration and listing data because, as you heard in earlier presentations, companies submit their own registration and listing data to FDA, which is required to be correct and accurate. FDA will take action if that submitted data is not correct, accurate, and complete. Thank you for your attention. I hope you found this presentation to be helpful in your line of work. We will be answering questions at the end of the session this afternoon, and I'd be happy to take your questions on this presentation.
Thank you for the great presentations. We'll now enter our break for 15 minutes. Enjoy your break.